Hello and welcome to the Farming Today This Week podcast with me, Charlotte Smith. In this episode, the illegal meat smuggled into the UK.
We've got to the point now where nothing really surprises the team. So every part of an animal we are seeing across a full spectrum, whether it's pig, beef, chicken, eggs, cheese, etc.
And going, gone.
6 months of work. And we had 7 pens of sheep done in 10 minutes in that auction. So you've got to make the most of it. You've got to enjoy it while you're there.
And who let the pigs out?
They do exceptionally well on the acorns, the beech marsh, the crab apples, and everything that falls onto the forest floor. They can gobble up and fattens them up really nicely.
More on all that later. First, though, starting a dairy herd from scratch is not for the faint-hearted. But that's what 3 new entrants into farming have done. They've spent the past decade building up their business in Wales, first milking goats, then expanding into cows. They don't produce as much milk as conventional herds because this is a calf-at-foot dairy, where the young are allowed to stay with their mother until they're weaned. Sophia Morgan-Swinhoe has been showing Verity Sharp around for On Your Farm.
This one for you, girlie. So we started off just selling raw goat's milk and then we introduced cows to the system, and now we do pasteurised cow's milk, we do yoghurt, we do multiple types of cheese and fudge. And you'll see that we've got 1 calf at the moment with the herd. So that's little baby peppercorn, just up by her mum Nutmeg.
This is at the heart of what you're doing, right? Mm-hmm. It's keeping calves and cows, or indeed kids and nanny goats, together. Why is that so important?
It started off as something that was really core to how I wanted to farm. When I first started off working on larger goat dairies, and the separation of the mum and the kid felt uncomfortable for the farmers that I was working with. It seemed like that they didn't really want to do it, but it was a necessity, and they just didn't feel like there was another way. And then obviously for me and the animals I work with, it's definitely a welfare perspective.
Yeah. So you've just milked these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cows,
mm-hmm.
and overnight they've been separated from their calves.
Yeah, so we start off very slowly and gently. When they're first born, we don't separate them at all.
So that's why we've got one little
exactly.
calf with us right now.
Yeah, so she's just a little too young. She's about to start her separation process, really.
And then a cow will produce enough milk for humans and the calf. Is that right? So they're kind of overproducing?
We think so. I mean, we haven't got a lot of overproducing breeds. We've predominantly Jersey. I find that customers are willing to pay a premium for a calf with cow product, and that allows us to be able to take the hit on volume.
And you can hear more from Dovey Dairy tomorrow morning here on BBC Radio 4 in On Your Farm at 6:30. Now, all this week, our sister programme, Farming Today, has been ringside at livestock markets. Over the last 20 years or so, the number of small markets has dropped, and there's a trend for bigger regional auction centres. But selling livestock through the sale ring isn't just about profit margins. It can still be a big part of people's social lives. Helen Millican has been to this year's Mule Gimmer lamb sale at Cockermouth Auction Mart, where West Cumbrian farmer Kevin Holliday and his daughter Vicky were in the thick of the action.
None of us probably slept last night because it's a big day. It's one of our main earnings of the year. 6 months of work, and we had 7 pens of sheep done in 10 minutes in that auction. So you've got to make the most of it. You've got to enjoy it while you're there.
And then you can enjoy the aftermath.
The atmosphere.
Well.
Yeah, the atmosphere around this ring today is lovely. There's a lot of people that we haven't seen since last year, and even people that are close by. We might live on the farm next door, we might not see them, but if you all congregate at the auction, have a bit of a crack and find out what's going on over the hill. No, it's a good day.
We've meant to have gone home to finish up the job that we didn't do this morning. These fellas, and I've been to talk to them all, and they're from all over. Cambridge lads, Oxfordshire lads, Anglesey over there, and they were telling us this is one of the friendliest auctions they can find. We all go and talk to everybody. This is Mr. Gilder. He brings the wagons up and helps us get all those sheep down country.
Well, we're in Gloucestershire, but we come up to see our friends and keep in touch.
Well, that's a huge reason for you coming here. It's not just about the trade.
I don't think you're buying any today, are you?
No.
You've just come to see your old mates.
Exactly. That's why we come, because these lovely characters that we've dealt with over the years and got to know, and it's worth everything.
Standing in the canteen queue now the sale is over, Mike Lawson, as a buyer, you can now relax a little bit?
Well, we can't relax too much because we haven't paid for them yet. But I've come to Cockermouth Auction all my life, love the place. It's part of my business, but it's also part of my daily life. People say to me, going to Auction Mart's a wasted day, but I never think a day at the Auction Mart's wasted because there's all sorts of different things you pick up off people when you're talking to them at auctions.
In the Auction Mart cafe, it's all about the crack as much as the commerce, not to mention the cake and the chips. Benson Hewitson is here as more of an interested onlooker.
Definitely, yeah. I've traded here all my life, and I'm here today out of pure interest.
How much of a focal point is the Mart for you, even though you're not farming full-time anymore?
If you've had a bad day or a bad week, you can come here and there's someone to talk to and you're accepted. And you go home a better person, a happier person. You really do.
That report from Cockermouth Mart from Helen Milliken. And if you ever get the chance, the best place to get breakfast is an auction mart. However, biosecurity and the risk of disease is increasingly a big issue for livestock marts, in particular restrictions that have been brought in to tackle bluetongue. Bluetongue affects cattle and sheep along with deer and goats. It can cause ulcers or sores around an animal's mouth and face, difficulties swallowing and breathing, and lead to fetal deformities and stillbirths. It's a virus spread by midges and poses no threat to humans or to food safety. Well, earlier this year, a restriction zone was brought in across the whole of England after several cases of the virus were confirmed. That meant that cattle and sheep moving from England to Wales had to be tested and hold a movement licence. Those restrictions were eased last week, meaning vaccinated animals can now cross the border freely. However, there have since been 2 outbreaks in Wales over the past week, and a control zone has been put in place around a farm in Chepstow when 1 cow tested positive, and 2 cows on a farm in Powys have been culled because of this disease. What's all this meant for marts? Mary-Claire Carey-Jones has been to Bilth Wells Market to gauge reaction.
Greg Christopher, I'm a livestock auctioneer for Bilth and Hereford Market Auctioneers. It's had a huge impact. Our main business would be in Hereford. Traditionally, Hereford would be a store sale, so we have breeding ewes and store lambs there every Tuesday. But obviously, since the bluetongue regulations, we've had to sort of enforce sales of store sheep in Bilth on a different day. So obviously, we've got double costs to running the sales. It's been very hard. Obviously, a lot of farmers haven't really fully understood the rules and regulations. So there's been constant stream of phone calls, inquiries, and people just not really understanding the full where they can sell and where they can't sort of purchase.
Farmers here at the market today are just trying to get on with the situation.
It is a worry, but we're going into winter now, so hopefully the midges, if I'm not a scientist, but the midges hopefully won't be around in the winter.
We sell a lot of our stock dead weight, so we don't use the markets too much. So it hasn't implicated my holding much, others it might have.
What do you think about the restrictions being lifted though? Do you think that's a good idea?
Yeah, obviously it's not easy having restrictions on farmers.
And farming unions agree.
I'm Toy Morgan, National Policy Advisor at NFU Cumbria. We definitely welcome the change that from the 21st, I think it was, of September, the sheep and cattle that were vaccinated were able to cross from the restricted zone into Wales with just a general licence. A key part of this throughout and feedback that we've been hearing from our members is we've got to try and balance the impact of having the disease, which no farmer wants, against the impact that the restrictions were having, both on the ability of a farmer to run their business and also the economic impact those restrictions were having on the industry more generally.
In a statement, the Welsh Government said it's keeping its bluetongue policy under regular review based on emerging evidence. It went on to urge livestock keepers to continue to be vigilant, to practice safe sourcing of livestock and to talk to their vets about bluetongue vaccination.
Mary-Claire Carey-Jones reporting there. Well, the latest figures from DEFRA show 87 bluetongue cases in England and 4 in Wales. Dr Carrie Batten is the World Organisation for Animal Health's bluetongue expert and head of the National Reference Laboratory for the disease at the Pirbright Institute.
We are moving towards the winter months, which means the midges which transmit the disease are starting to decline. However, there's still a bit of a time lag from the point that we have infectious midges at the moment that will still be able to bite new hosts, cause new infections until those midges go ahead and die off as the winter goes on. So I think people need to remain vigilant. They need to be looking for clinical signs and, where possible, vaccinating their flocks.
Last week we had calls from vets to farmers to vaccinate their flocks, but the latest figures I could find suggested that about 3% of cattle and sheep have been vaccinating, suggesting that farmers don't really think it's worth it.
So I think farmers need to talk to their vets about the pros and cons of vaccination. I think farmers have their own individual right to decide whether to vaccinate or not to vaccinate. But the only way to really address a large-scale bluetongue outbreak is to protect the national herd. There will be more bluetongue out there. Cattle often are asymptomatic. Sheep can be asymptomatic. So what we are detecting are the severe clinical cases, recently in Devon and Cornwall and now in Wales.
And also in Cornwall, you found another case, which is a different strain of this disease.
Yes, that's correct. So there was a clinical suspicion of bluetongue in a sheep late last week. Bluetongue type 3 was not detected, but we did find bluetongue type 8. And this is the first time that we've detected BTV type 8 since about 2008. There has been a large outbreak of bluetongue type 8 in the southwest of France, and it's highly likely that this infection in Cornwall is a result of midges infected with BTV8 coming over from the continent into Cornwall.
How different are 3 and 8?
Bluetongue is very much more than one disease. There are currently 29 recognised classic serotypes of BTV, all of which present slightly differently in terms of their clinical severity. Although we now have vaccines against bluetongue type 3, those vaccines would not protect against BTV8, and nor would BTV8 vaccines, which we also have available, protect against BTV3. So they really are two separate diseases.
Which, from a farming point of view, makes it even more complicated, doesn't it?
Absolutely. We certainly need people to continue to vaccinate against BTV3. The question around BTV8 vaccination will really depend on the emerging picture.
How does what's happening here compare with what's been happening in Europe over the summer?
I think to give farmers some good news will be that through mandatory vaccination in Belgium and voluntary vaccination against BTV3 in the Netherlands, they've seen very, very few cases. Now, granted, they would have had a lot of infection in the 2 years prior, but vaccination clearly has dampened the outbreak this season.
Dr Carrie Batten. The way deprivation is measured here in the UK means that the challenges facing rural areas aren't taken into account. That's the conclusion of Pretty Poverty, a new report from Plymouth Marjon University. It argues that rural hardship could be hidden behind scenic views, and that factors like needing to own a car in remote areas with poor public transport aren't taken into consideration. Professor Tanya Ovenden-Hope, lead researcher for the study, told me why poverty in rural areas is sometimes missed.
The key problem with measuring deprivation in rural areas is spatial averaging. So at the moment, the way the government measures it is using something called lower super output areas. These areas are quite big, so when you have areas with low density populations like we have in rural areas, what it tends to do is smooth out localised deprivation. By this I mean, if you have affluence right next to poverty, then you have an averaging effect. So it doesn't really work for lower density areas.
And what impact does that then have?
It means that the resources that we need in rural areas don't reach there because the measurement never represents the true deprivation that exists. We have indicators such as crime levels, public transport access, that don't actually reflect the way rural areas access those resources. One of the things most overlooked for our rural communities is transport. That transport dependency, which may be perceived as affluence by others. In Cornwall, for example, we have a very high car ownership, the highest in the country, average of 3 per household. But what that actually means isn't that these households are affluent. It means that every activity that they do requires private transport to get to it, to go to school, to go to the shops, to go to the doctors, and it costs more money to do it.
Now, the government told the BBC that the indices of deprivation meet the high standards of trustworthiness, quality and value required for statistics. We are working across government to investigate deprivation in rural areas to further consider what data and methods we can use to help quantify it, and will release a report on rural deprivation in October. What action would you hope that report will highlight?
I hope that the report that the government put out highlights a place-based sensitivity in any new measures that it might be considering to recognise rural deprivation and coastal deprivation as well. My concern is, if we look at the Pride in Place funding that's just come out, the indices of multiple deprivation was combined with Community Needs Index. The issue I have with that is the Community Needs Index looks at trust within its community as an indicator of affluence, not an indicator of need. When we were researching, what came out very clearly was community resilience. By this, I mean the community supported each other with things like transport. If one person couldn't get to the doctors, then another person would step up and give them a lift because they owned a car. That community resilience masks the deprivation that exists underneath it. If we use community resilience as a proxy for trust within a community, then it's not reflecting affluence, it's actually reflecting need. So my concern is that any measures that come forward need to be place sensitive. They need to recognise that rural living is different to urban living.
Professor Tanya Ovenden-Hope there. 20 tonnes of illegal meat and animal products were intercepted at Dover in September alone. That's according to the head of Port Health and Public Protection there. Lucy Manzano told us that the amount of illegal meat found in vans and even coaches is escalating. Last month, MPs on the Commons Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Committee warned that the problem was at crisis level and increased the risk of diseases like foot and mouth or African swine fever entering the UK. The Dover Port Health Authority is part of the District Council and it works alongside the Border Force. Lucy Manzano told Anna Hill what her staff are seeing.
Unfortunately, the figures continue to escalate. In 2022, we seized 1.3 tonnes in September. If we jump forward to 2025, we have seized a total of 20.5 tonnes. So we are talking about a 15-fold increase. And what we are seeing pretty much on a month-by-month basis is a sort of 300% surge in products that we are removing. And of course, that's only the products we are removing with very limited staff and indeed 30% less staff than we had in 2022.
Just describe what you're encountering when you search vehicles.
We've got to the point now where nothing really surprises the team. So every part of an animal we are seeing across a full spectrum, whether it's pig, beef, chicken, eggs, cheese, etc. We're getting the full spectrum and every cut, slice and presentation you could possibly imagine. And these products are travelling for several days, sometimes up to a week, within vehicles that do not have, appropriate refrigeration or hygiene conditions, etc.
Is this frozen or fresh?
It may well have started off frozen by the time it arrives with us. It is at ambient temperatures, which obviously presents a much wider public health risk from a sort of food safety point of view. And the meat is often displays signs of poor welfare, will be visually unclean and dirty. And it comes in a range of packaging, from quite high-end packaging without labelling, without mark, or in reused plastic boxes, second-hand boxes, foil, paper. It really is an array of presentations. There is no real consistency. The only real consistency that we're seeing is that these volumes are significantly rising.
Are they in amongst other consignments, or are they actually just blatantly in the back of a van?
They are largely in plain sight. We have a few that will come in vans, and there will be other objects stacked on top of them, furniture, non-food related items in an attempt to cover them, or coach, which is another common mode of transport that's used to bring in large quantities of illegal products of animal origin.
Where has this come from, and is there a pattern?
We're seeing a mix, actually, of it coming from both within European countries and countries that we would refer to as rest of world. We are commonly seeing products coming from countries such as Romania, Moldova, Ukraine, Poland.
DEFRA says, it's given 3.1 million funding for the Port Health Authority.
This financial year, we haven't received any payments from DEFRA. Our funding has been cut, and we have less staff now than we did in 2022. We are using our own intelligence to try and move with the trade. We only have capacity to cover 20%. And so from some hard work from the Dover Port Health team, we are putting great effort into moving our work round to catch them when they are most likely to be coming in.
Lucy Manzano from the Dover Port Health Authority. Well, in a statement, DEFRA told us this government has significantly increased seizures of illegal meat, restricted the import of dangerous animal products, and is investing over £1 billion in a new National Biosecurity Centre to protect our food supply, farmers and economy. We have steadily tightened the rules for importing meat into Great Britain and will continue to work closely with port operators, industry, trade partners and border force to shield our livestock, crops and food chain from dangerous diseases. Well, if you've been out in the countryside over the past few weeks, you may have noticed the huge amounts of acorns and beech nuts or beech mast on the ground. Every 5 years or so we get this abundance, and it's known as a mast year. In the New Forest, commoners are allowed to let their animals graze freely, and every year permission is given for pigs to come out into the woodland and eat up the acorns. Anna spoke to Jonathan Gorelli, head agister of the New Forest, who organises the management of grazing.
It's an old tradition. There's been pigs turned out into the New Forest for many hundreds of years. It's basically putting the pigs out. They do exceptionally well on the acorns, the beech mast, the crab apples, and everything that falls onto the forest floor. They can gobble up and fattens them up really nicely.
And of course, acorns can't be eaten by everything. So which animals shouldn't be eating acorns? And do they avoid them naturally?
No, this is one of the problems, of course. The acorns, we have obviously thousands of oak trees in the New Forest, and this is a bumper crop this year, and unfortunately ponies and cattle sometimes will get a taste for acorns and will eat them, and if they eat too many of them it can cause them severe problems. It can be fatal. Already this year we have unfortunately lost one or two animals due to acorn poisoning, but of course the pigs can eat them quite safely and do very well on them. So when we have a heavy crop of acorns, the commoners will try and turn out quite a large number of pigs.
And it is this year a so-called a mast year, isn't it?
Yes, that's right, exactly. That it does seem to be a particularly heavy crop. Whether that is as a result of the exceptionally dry weather, dry spring and dry summer we had, and sort of kicked the oak trees into overdrive with producing their fruit, which is the acorns. And mast is a very good point to make, because to turn pigs out onto the forest, the commoners have to have the right of mast. There are a number of different forest rights attached to a commoner's property. The right of pasture allows you to turn out ponies, cattle and donkeys, but you have to have the specific right of mast to be able to turn pigs out to graze in the forest. So not every commoner has that attached to their property.
So how many pigs are there allowed to go into the forest? Do you keep a check on that?
Yes, we do. So what happens is the commoners will contact their local agister. The agister will go along and we will mark every pig that's going to go out there, and we mark them by a numbered ear tag. We also check, of course, one other thing before the pigs are turned out. They have to be rung correctly, and this means putting rings into their noses to stop them from digging. As we know, pigs love to dig and hook the ground, and we want them to eat what falls onto the forest floor. We don't want them digging up the forest floor, and we don't want them damaging the grazing which is there for the cattle and ponies.
What's it like when you let them out? I mean, did they come out in a big swathe, a horde of pigs, or is it just one by one?
Each commoner has got a slightly different way of doing things. Some commoners will load up pigs and take them out right out into the depths of the forest and let them go. Some commoners will have holdings which have gates directly onto the forest. They can just literally open their gate and let their pigs out. So it all depends on the individual. And the other thing they have to do is pay a fee to put them out there, what we call a marking fee.
How do you round them up to get them back in again?
Yeah, that again is down to the individual owners. One thing with the pigs, of course, they are quite intelligent animals and they learn very quickly. And a lot of the pigs will know where home is. They will travel back to the holdings. Quite often they will go back there every day at night to sleep. They might have a nice warm bed to go and sleep in. But any pigs that are further afield, the commoners can go out with food generally, and after a couple of days of feeding, they can generally get them into somewhere to load them up and get them back home.
Jonathan Gorelli there from the New Forest. That's it from us. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer is Rebecca Rooney, and Farming Today this week is a BBC Audio Bristol production.